Hello, everybody. Good to see so many people here and some new names. And hello to all our Goldster members. It's great to see you. It's wonderful to welcome you back. Oops, let me just let somebody else in. It's wonderful to see so many people coming back and as well new people joining. And I'm really thrilled today to welcome NicolaBeauman, who I have known for quite a few years now through the Society of Authors and haven't managed to see, obviously, with the pandemic for quite some time. So Nicola, welcome to Goldster. It's really lovely to have you here today. And I am so excited to have you talk about Persephone, because as you know, I love Persephone books. So tell us about how you came up with the idea for founding this, what is now an amazing institution. And I'm actually going to put the website into the chat just so that everybody can see it in case they don't all know what I'm talking about already. So how did it begin?
That's so nice of you, Lucinda. Thank you. Well, you have to go back quite a few years to me being at university and not very happily reading English, unable to understand why I was meant to do Greek tragedy and Milton, and was never allowed to read any women writers apart from what Jeanette Winterson calls the Big Four, which she was allowed to read at Oxford: Bronte's Squared, George Eliot, etc. So when I left university, I started having children rather young, as we did in those days. And I signed a contract to write a book about women writers when I was something like 25. But it took me 10 years because of the same children to write it. So then it was published in 1983, and it's called A Very Great Profession, the woman's novel 1914 to 39. Of course, you'd never call it that now, i.e. the woman bit, but there we go, you know, it was a different era. And the phrase "a very great profession" was Virginia Woolf's, meaning the greatest profession was women who stayed at home. I know it's a bit left field. You wouldn't think Virginia Woolf would say that, would you?
No.
And so that was Virago, and I wrote one or two prefaces for Virago, although we had quite different tastes, because they're much more feminist with the capital F than me. I'm the kind of feminist which assumes everyone's feminist and tolerant, but not with a capital F. Does that make sense?
That does make sense, yes, absolutely.
Anyway, so then I wrote 3 more books, biographies, and then in the late 90s, I almost literally woke up one morning and I was fed up with suggesting books to other people and them saying, no, we don't think these are good. And I thought, I'm going to do it myself.
Brilliant.
So that's how it started.
So who was the first author or the first few authors that you thought, these are unfairly forgotten and I really want to get their works back out there again? And why did you choose them?
Well, it's our best-selling writer, Dorothy Whipple. And we've now done all her books, apart from a memoir, which we're doing this autumn, but we've done 8 novels and her short stories. And she, I'm happy to say, is our best-selling writer.
So tell us about Dorothy and what it was that first drew you to. How did you discover her work and why did she have such an interest for you?
Gosh, well, the very interesting thing about Dorothy Whipple is she's very hard to write about. And this is one of the reasons she's not better known, because my theory is that everything that people read, what you might loosely call the canon, i.e. the canon of what is great and what isn't great, the canon is decided at the universities by the academies, although people don't really realize that. And then it filters down through the academies, down through, as it were, the Times Literary Supplement and the Sunday papers, and on we go. And Dorothy Whipple is extremely hard to write about, and therefore no one will ever do a PhD, and therefore the academies will never take her up. It's really interesting, isn't it?
And what makes her so hard to write about, do you think?
She doesn't do fine writing. Her writing, her prose is incredibly good and clear and workmanlike and witty, but it's not the kind of sentences you can analyze. She doesn't do stuff you can analyze. It's an incredibly interesting subject, what makes a PhD and what doesn't. So people like Ivy Compton Burnett, Barbara Pym, Elizabeth Bowen, they all make PhDs, but the kind of writers I'm interested in don't. There's a PhD for someone there one day.
I was going to say, that sounds like an
PhD no, but the whole system of PhDs is mad, because people have to do one in teach literature. Do you have one?
I don't know, because I wanted to write a PhD on Kate Perugini, and then I got offered a book deal, and I thought, do I pay a lot of money to do a PhD, or do I get paid to write the book? So I decided to do it that way. And you know, it's like, as you know, writing a biography is like writing a PhD. I mean, it's 5 or 6 or 7 years of research. And,
well, you and I with our books.
Yeah,
we've actually done as much work as other people.
Yeah, it's when you get that intensely into it. I was quite glad I didn't have somebody saying to me, oh, no, you can't include this bit, that's not academic enough. I just wanted to be able to include it all. We've had a comment already. Hello, I absolutely love Dorothy Whipple. Thank you so much for saving her books. So, and you have saved her books, really, because you've brought them back out. With so many of these writers, you've brought them into prominence. They probably would have been forgotten completely. And I know you don't entirely do female writers now, but at the beginning, am I right, your remit was, it was unfairly forgotten female writers to start with, is that correct?
Well, it was, but again, rather like the kind of feminism where I'm assuming that people are subtle enough and all embracing enough not to have to be outrageously feminist. I assume people would understand why all our writers weren't female. So book number 11, which was quite early on, was actually Nicholas Mosley's biography of the First World War poet Julian Grenfell. So you can see quite early on we had a man. And now our best-selling male writer is R.C. Sherif. Sorry, yes.
Sorry, yes, so tell us about him. Why is he your best-selling male writer?
Well, R.C. Sherif, who wrote Journey's End, wrote this incredible novel called The Fortnight in September, which is about a family going on holiday in Bognor Regis. End of story. So this is actually bearing out just what I said. You can't do a PhD on that, can you? Anyway,
no, but do you need to do a PhD to enjoy a book and to enjoy a writer? Isn't it wonderful to have writers who just write books that we love reading?
Yes.
So, and we have another comment. I also love Dorothy Whipple. I so missed the shop in London. So this, thank you very much. It's like I primed this person to write this. Tell us about the shop, how it began and where it's moved on to and things, and how people can get hold of Persephone books.
Well, we started in a factory in Clerkenwell. It used to make pleated skirts. Do you remember those old-fashioned, but actually probably rather fashionable now, pleated skirts? They used to do the pleating. And we moved in there for 2.5 years, and then our lease was up. And rather like Persephone, we had to come up from the underworld in the spring. And in the spring of 2001, we moved to a shop in Bloomsbury. And there seemed to be rather a lot of negatives in my life, because people said a publisher having a shop, what a bizarre idea. But actually it worked brilliantly.
It was a great idea.
We were there 20 years and now we've moved to Bath.
So
I'm very sorry.
I also missed the shop in London because I love Lamb's Conduit Street where it was. It's such a gorgeous street and it was such an asset to that street. However, I think that Bath is also a fantastic place for it. And don't worry if you can't get to Bath, because you can also buy Persephone's books, obviously, online. If you look at the website, you can also get them from any bookshop as well. You don't have to buy them from Persephone Books, do you? You can order them from your local bookshop, and you can also buy them from Persephone themselves. And tell us as well, because one of the things I love about Persephone is your special books that you do, which is just this fantastic deal. So getting them sent to you regularly every month. Tell us about the Book of the Month subscription, because it's such a lovely present to give someone as well.
Well, you can have 12 books. You either can be given them or you order them yourself. Often if it's a present, people just choose the first book and then somebody rings up with their next choices. You can get 6 or 12. And then the idea is that every month a book comes through your letterbox, which you know will be really, really good. And I'm not saying that arrogantly, but what we haven't discussed is the whole Persephone choice. So the point is, of all the people watching today, only about 20% will love the books. You know, we don't expect to appeal to everybody, but those people will love the books. And the idea is that if you love one, that you like them all. I'd be pretty mortified. I mean, obviously not everyone's going to love all the books. Like we've done one called Into the Whirlwind, which is about Eugenia Ginsburg, who was Russian, sent to the Gulag. It's on my mind because unfortunately it's so horribly topical, but not everybody's going to like that. And then we have much more anodyne books, and we have cookery books, we have short stories, and then we have our bestseller, which is Miss Pettigrew Lives for a Day.
So do tell us about this. I don't know if everybody here has read this yet, but we're actually going to do this with our book club in a couple of months. So I absolutely love Miss Pettigrew. It's a gorgeous book. Tell us about how you found this and this phenomenal success that it became, and what that was like as a journey as a publisher from the start right up to the great success.
Well, I didn't find it. The most wonderful person who then wrote the preface, called Henrietta Twycross Martin, bought it into the office in Clerkenwell to the pleating factory. And she said, this was my mother's favourite book. And I don't know, people never know why bestsellers happened, do they?
So we've just had one comment already. Miss Pettigrew is lovely. So people out there do know about Miss Pettigrew. Tell us about the story and how charming it is, and what just seems to have captured the imagination.
It's a Cinderella story. It's a woman who then was thought very elderly, but probably is only about 35, who was a governess, a rather bad governess, and was sent by the employment agency to the wrong place. It was a nightclub singer. And she and the nightclub singer immediately hit it off, although they were so different. And they had 24 hours together of blissful fun. And it's just a delightful book. It has drawings. It's really good. But Lucinda, I think, as I said to you, there's not a lot to discuss in a book club, but you'll have to think of things.
Oh, don't worry, we can think of many things. We've got another comment here. Miss Pettigrew was my first one of your books, and I love it. And I think that's the case with a lot of people. I think Miss Pettigrew is how people discovered Persephone books. A lot of people. Do you agree?
Yes, because it sold so many copies. It must be. But the interesting thing is, if you like Miss Pettigrew, you will also like our other books.
I totally agree. Yes.
Goodness knows
and if you like Miss Pettigrew, you will love Dorothy Whipple. There's so, I mean, you've got some fantastic authors there. It's just a fantastic way of seeing life. Also, for me, what I find fascinating is looking at when it was written. You know, today we're quite used to people writing books about that time, but living in the present day. But when you're reading a book that was written in, say, the 30s, writing about the 30s, or the 20s, writing about the 20s, it just gives you this fascinating insight into what life was actually like. And I think Miss Pettigrew as well at the moment, you know, we've got another time of haves and have-nots. You know, poverty is getting bigger in this country, and people are frightened, particularly after the pandemic, about their work and their family. And I think it can really speak to a time now where you've got lots of people living an Instagram life, and then lots of people thinking, oh my goodness, I can't believe how frightening life is. And it captures that so beautifully in a time pre the NHS, you know, before we're all lucky enough now to, you know that if we get very ill, we'll be taken care of. But, you know, and there is social security. But then, you know, if you didn't have a job as a woman of a certain age, terribly young to us, but thought to be elderly then, you know, you were in trouble. So I think it's got a great pathos about it. as well.
Yes.
We have another comment here. I found, sorry.
No, go
carry
ahead.
on, Nicola.
No, I was only going to say, go on, you give me the comment.
I found Persephone through an article about you and the Bath shop in the Western Morning News. My daughter lives in Bath, so I visit you every time I can.
Oh, that's so
and
nice.
I think that Persephone has these regular fans, don't they? I mean, you have people who pop into the shop regularly, who, you know, who subscribe to your magazine, who really love the fact that it's such a community. It's not just a publisher, it's not just a bookshop, it's a whole community of writers and people who love books.
Well, the community is my writers, and I always feel I wish they could know how they're being revived. And I wish Dorothy Whipple could see how much people love her, you know.
Have you had any?
No, I was going to make another.
Oh, yes, do. Sorry.
Go on. Yeah.
Oh, Nicola, you carry on.
No, you said.
It's a bit bad. No,
okay, I was going to make the point. It is wonderful about understanding a society how back then, but then you have the difficulty of setting today's values against values then, and you can't always edit out, for example, the N-word, because because you do books in two ways. You either do them by resetting them, or you do them facsimile, which basically means you photograph them. And if you do them facsimile, you can't edit out, as it were, the N-word. And that does nowadays, with people being so onto it, it does cause some problems.
But also, there's a whole question to be asked here, and maybe people are happy to put things in the chat about this, but should you edit them out, or should you not show the time as it actually was? Because my fear of, you know, getting rid of everything like that is that then people don't understand what it was like in the past. They don't understand that people did have different attitudes, that there was anti-Semitism, there was racism in general. It's a difficult one, because
so hard.
If you don't want to take away the enjoyment of a book, or do you have a footnote to explain, you know, this is not acceptable now, but at the time this was, unfortunately, this was just normal everyday thinking. It's such a challenge. Tell us about that, because I think you've had to do that recently with Monica Dickens, haven't you? I apologize, sorry.
No, I've just made the decision with reprinting Mariana by Monica Dickens, which is one of our bestsellers. We must have sold 12 or 15,000 copies over the years. I mean, this is a long time. I just made the decision because it was very easy to edit out two small bits of anti-Semitism. And it's a really hard decision. And eventually I decided I would, for the following reason: anything for a quiet life. I just thought, I can't be bothered with people writing to me and saying I was upset, so they've gone. But it's really hard.
Because you've had this book that's been, obviously this is one of your older titles, it's because you've received so many letters like that, is it, that you made that decision in this to redo that? Or is this a new one of Monica's?
Not that many, but no, not that many. But somebody put on Twitter, Mariana would be a hot water bottle book if a hot water bottle was anti-Semitic.
Right.
And I just thought, I can't be bothered. You know, it's a really hard decision.
Yeah.
And
we've had a comment.
We can't.
You can't, what, sorry?
No.
You
edit
do
things.
carry on, Nicola.
No.
Yeah.
No, I was only going to say, I can't always edit.
And we've had a comment here: I don't think such words should be edited out. Surely readers can be trusted to understand historical context in an ideal world. What do you think about that, Nicola?
Especially younger ones. Can't.
I mean, obviously there's things I read and I get frustrated that was the attitude in the past, but I also worry about rewriting history, because that to me is where danger lies. That if you rewrite history and you pretend these things never happened, then they can happen again. And I have a real problem with that, because I think we have a responsibility as writers to tell the truth about a situation and a time. And you know, we hear far too much about leaders around the world deciding they're going to rewrite their country's history. And that, I think, is even more dangerous than showing showing it in all its, warts and all, the unpleasantnesses of the past alongside the good things of the past. But and I'm very happy for people to disagree with me in the chat as well, if anybody wants to put that in. I just find it's such a thorny one. And I think for publishers like yourselves who are bringing, forgotten works back to the forefront, this whole idea of trying to make them palatable for 21st century audiences is a very tough one. Is there anything else that you've come across like that, where you've really had to make the decision or not make the decision, and you thought it was the right or the wrong one?
Well, the other interesting thing, of course, is typographical errors, typos. So, I mean, for example, it's very, very interesting that Leonard and Virginia Woolf at the Hogarth Press were such terrible proofreaders. So we've just reprinted a wonderful, wonderful novel called The Rector's Daughter by F.M. Mayer, which was Hogarth in 1924, but clearly they had no proofreaders. I cannot tell you how long it took me, because we reset it. So you get the reset version from the we call her the typesetter. You get the reset version of the typesetter, and then it's proofread twice. I mean, it took me basically the whole of last summer. There were so many typos. Can you believe it?
That actually makes me laugh. I think that fits in with the Bloomsbury ethos, really. I mean, it's just let it go. It's done. It's creativity. Let's just let it happen. Let's not have any formalized rules around it. I quite like that. I'm going to be teaching Bloomsbury to my students in a couple of weeks. And I'm actually going to mention that because I love that idea.
Oh, I'm longing for someone to do an MA on the lack of proofreaders at the Hogarth Press.
Well, there we are. I think that's a question we're going to put out there. And if somebody's looking for an MA subject, they should do it. And Nicola can be one of your research clients. Yes. So we have a comment here. History should be told warts and all. We should learn from past mistakes and attitudes. And that's I feel the same way. I do, as I said, I feel that we don't learn. We don't know those mistakes have been made if everything is, edited out. But at the same time, if it's, I don't know, it's such a hard one, such a thorny issue, perhaps, Nicola, you have to take it case by case with some of your books. But yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it?
You might say in this particular week, have we learned by our past mistakes?
I think if we look at this particular week in history, I don't think we've learned anything. We have another comment here. I so agree. We need to know what has happened, so hopefully we don't repeat these things again. History is very important, and so many aren't educated what has happened regarding women and racism. Very, very good point there. That people, I'm always amazed by, when I teach students, the things they don't know about attitudes in the past, and they have no idea, particularly in regard to civil rights movements and women's rights movements, just how incredibly privileged we are right now compared to what it was like in the past. So yes, I think sounds like there's no other dissenting voice. I think we're all kind of feeling the same way as you do, Nicola, that sometimes these things just have to be left in to show what the attitudes were. Yeah. And I want to talk about the name Persephone, such a great name. Did you know always that was what was going to be the name of your company, or how did that come about?
No, one of my sons was then a conductor, and Stravinsky's opera Persephone, is that the name? It's just called Persephone, was on that spring of 1998. And of course, it's a very good name symbolically, because she goes down into the underworld like all these novels, and then they're brought up into the light, like the books. And also her mother searched for her, Demeter, and we have a very, very domestic angle. I mean, give me a novel about mothers and children and I'll reprint it.
So there you are. If anybody has any books that they absolutely loved when they were younger and they just don't know why they can't get hold of it now, it might be an idea to get in touch with Nicola at Persephone and say, hey, what about this book? Like you said with Miss Pettigrew, somebody came in and said this was my mother's favorite book. Now I want to go back to Miss Pettigrew briefly because it was made into a film. And what was that like? And did it suddenly get people knowing more about Persephone itself, or did you have any input in choosing the actors in the casting or anything like that?
No, I mean, Frances McDormand, who was the star, did then record it as an audiobook, and we did a new edition. We have two editions of our books. We have the grey, one of these, which people are familiar with end paper.
Yes, great. Those
but
end
then
papers.
we also have an edition which has pictures on the front, and they do better in bookshops. So we did Pettigrew as the first. We call them the classics. We did Miss Pettigrew as the first. And it didn't actually make a lot of difference to our life, no, but it was wonderful.
Interesting. You know? I would have thought it would have made a huge difference.
No.
Well, I thought Frances McDormand, who's such an incredible actress, was superb. And then Kieran Hines, fantastic. I mean, the casting was really excellent in my view. So I wondered if you'd had any input into that at all, but you must have been pleased, I hope, with the finished product of the film, or did it differ from your opinion?
We went one day on set.
Oh, great.
And there was a word which I thought was wrong, and they did edit it out, but I'm so sorry, I've forgotten what the word is. So
but that's great. So you were able to actually have some kind of artistic input. And did you get invited to the premiere?
No.
Oh, that was a bit mean of them.
Well, I don't think, do you know, I can't remember. We didn't go to anywhere glamorous anyway.
So you just showed the end papers, and this is one of the things I think that is so beautiful. In fact, I don't know if you've got any others you can just, or show those ones again, just to show people. The end papers, for those of you who haven't worked in publishing, they are just when you open up the cover of the book, and you have, I don't unfortunately have mine next to me, which is frustrating, but each one at Persephone is different, isn't it? So will you tell us?
This is a suffragette novel, and there you have the end paper. And then so every book has a bookmark. So here's a bookmark for another book.
And the bookmark matches the end papers. So it's a very beautiful, perfect. So tell us, how do those get chosen? Because when I look at what the end papers have come from, how they've been inspired, somebody's really spending a lot of time, I don't know if that's you or somebody else who works for you, coming up with the correct end paper for that particular book. So what's the process there?
It's sort of luck, and it doesn't actually take that long. We have quite a lot of, I know quite a lot about textiles. I might show you the two textiles for the books we're doing next month here.
Oh, yes, please do.
So this is one.
Fantastic. Where did you find that?
Another. There's a wonderful woman who deals in textiles and clothes, and she actually found me an overall made in this material, and this one we've got a dress. So they'll be on display in the shop. Would you like to see the dress? It's just here. Hold on.
Yes, we'd love to see the dress. Thank you. So for those of you who haven't actually seen Persephone books, each one, that end paper goes with the era of the book as it was written. Oh, wow. Look. That's fantastic.
Isn't it beautiful?
I wondered if you spent your life going through kind of archives and looking through wallpaper samples and textile factory books and that kind of thing.
I wish.
You don't have time to do that, I suppose.
Well, but I mean, it's just luck.
Yeah. Well, they always look gorgeous, and it's
so she's called.
Yeah.
Good.
It is such a joy when you get.
Now ask me something else. Yes.
Yes, and you have that dove grey colour, on the outside, and then you open it, there's this burst of color, and then you have that little bookmark to show that which one you've got. And it's just such, I think it's such a fantastic design. I don't know who first came up with that, but it really is a special book. If you give a Persephone book as a present, it's very much a kind of almost packaged in itself. And I think that's such a thoughtful process behind that. Perhaps that comes from having an author who's also a publisher. Do you think that's the case?
No, I think it's because I rather wish I'd read fine arts, and that's why I do a post on our website every day, which has a different painting every day. And I could easily have done fine art. So it's bringing those two things together.
I'm going to just post your current one, which is beautiful. Yesterday's was Spring Morning Belgravia by Charles McCall. How lovely. I'm going to post this in the chat so people can see.
And I didn't do one today because of, as I was telling you earlier, of our internet being down.
Yes.
But anyway.
So Nicola's had a bit of a morning, knowing that she had to appear on Zoom and then having absolutely no broadband. Having to rush from the shop. Now, I wanted to go to your own books for a moment, Nicola, because you are an author yourself. So you've written a biography of Cynthia Asquith and one of my favorite writers, E.M. Forster. Tell us a little bit about those. Tell us a bit about Cynthia Asquith to start off with, please.
Well, Cynthia Asquith was married to a younger son of the Prime Minister. And the reason she's interesting is during the First World War, she kept the most incredibly detailed diaries. So everybody who writes about the First World War draws on her diaries. And she had a very sad but very interesting life. And I loved writing about her. And then I wrote about Forster, who actually is my favorite novelist. I can't deny it.
Oh, he is wonderful. And I mean, I just like him as a person as well. I hope you did too when you were writing about him. What was it that you... him. I just love him. There's something so gentle about Forster. In amongst the turbulence of the rest of the Bloomsburys, there's this very gentle man. Tell people who don't know anything about Forster about his life, because I think it's a very interesting life as well.
Lucinda, I can't believe that somebody would be watching this who hasn't read one Forster novel. I'd be amazed.
We don't know. Which is your favourite Forster novel?
Oh, God. I think Howard's End is probably my favourite. But it's rather like with Persephone books. You can't have favourites because I love A Room with a View. I love A Passage to India. Absolutely think it's superb. But Howard's End is probably my favourite. And so that was a wonderful 5 years writing about Forster. And then I've written about a really, really, really great novelist who, again, I feel...
Sorry. Well,
she's a great novelist.
Oh, sorry. I love Elizabeth Taylor books. We actually did have a comment in the chat from someone who said they hadn't read any E.M. Forster. So I think, I mean, my favorite one, and I think we're going to do it for book club at some point, is A Room with a View, because I just think it's absolutely fantastic and I love it. I've read it multiple times since I was a teenager and it's just amazing. And then we've got a comment from someone else who says, I loved Passage to India. Do you know, I haven't read that for years. And I was just thinking the other day, I must read that because I don't think I've read that since I was a teenager, actually. Yeah.
Oh, you're so lucky. What a treat.
But Elizabeth Taylor is a novelist who a lot of people don't know about. And if you haven't discovered Elizabeth Taylor, I can thoroughly recommend you reading some of her books, because she's, and obviously we're not talking about the actress, it's different, Elizabeth Taylor. So tell us what you think of why you particularly enjoy her books.
Elizabeth Taylor has an incredible style. Once you read one of her sentences, you'll almost recognize her. I mean, A Game of Hide and Seek, which in a way is her greatest novel, is a great love story. They're funny. She's very funny. The most well-known is Mrs. Palfrey at the Claremont.
Oh, wonderful novel.
Won the,
yeah. Yes.
Wonderful.
That Mrs. Palfrey at the Claremont was the first one of hers that I read, and I just went back and reread. I kept lending it to people because I just thought it was such a fabulous book. So she's not one of your authors. I assume that's because she's still very much in print. She's someone you'd like to poach, is she?
Yes.
Do you have any others like that? People you wish you could have, but they're still in print with other publishers?
There's an incredible novel by one of our authors, Molly Panter Downs, and she wrote a novel called One Fine Day, and I would love to poach that. But we sell it in the shop. We have a shelf in the shop called The 50 Books We Wish We Had Published. So it's there.
And who else is on that? What are the other kind of writers that you wish you'd published?
Elizabeth Jane Howard.
Mm-hmm.
You know the Cazalet Chronicles. Have you read that?
Yes. Yeah.
Jane Austen, obviously. Because we're in Bath. I was
going to say in Bath, you have to do that, don't you?
And we stock quite a lot of books you might be quite surprised to find. Like there's a book about Chinese young women called Factory Girls, which is absolutely incredible, about how young women are living in China. So it's a changing selection. But anyway, Molly Panter Downs is One Fine Day is there. Oh, I know the other great novel, have you read it, is The Tortoise and the Hare by Elizabeth Jenkins.
Oh, I don't know that one. No, is that one I should read?
Oh, you're so lucky, Lucinda. It's an incredible, wonderful novel. In fact, you could do it with the book.
The Tortoise and the Hare. I'm going to write this in here for everybody. I'm going to write this in here for everybody because I know. And the Hare. And what was the name of the author? Sorry, Elizabeth. Was it Elizabeth Jenkins? Did you say, Nicola? Elizabeth Jenkins. Okay. Great. And we've had a comment saying lots of Persephone books, as well as Elizabeth Taylor's books, are discussed on the Backlisted podcast. Do you have a shelf called Backlisted?
They haven't actually discussed that many of our books. They've discussed The Fortnight in September. But John Mitchinson, who runs it with Andy, is coming in June on Bloomsday, which is the day Ulysses is set, to discuss the canon. That'll be good, won't it?
Excellent. Yes, it will be. And I understand you're going to be doing something with Bath, with the festival that they do there, which is a kind of literature and music festival. What are you doing with them?
Well, we have a beautiful first floor room above the shop, and they're using it for a few events, and I'm giving a talk, and my daughter Fran, who's written a rather good book, I would say that, but anyway, called The Literary Almanac, where she chooses 5 books for every month of the year and writes about them.
Fantastic. Excellent. And we've got a comment here. I have read The Tortoise and the Hare. I read it just last month and it is great. And another person here expresses they love Elizabeth Jane Howard. Obviously, Elizabeth is a good writing name. Seems to be a lot of Elizabeths there. So tell us the book that started it all. A Very Great Profession, the women's novel, 1914 to 39. You mentioned it briefly at the beginning, but who were the writers in that you felt had to be mentioned? Are they all people who've ended up being Persephone authors, or were there people that people would have already recognized? Yeah,
some of them. Well, it's divided into chapters, and each chapter has a theme. So the first one is the First World War. Then there's domesticity, psychoanalysis, themes like that. And then I use the literature to illustrate the theme. And the writers, well, there's a sort of glossary at the back of all the writers. But for example, E.M. Delafield, who wrote Diary of a Provincial.
And you've published another of her books, haven't you? E.M. Delafield.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then the very first book we did is a First World War novel called William an Englishman. And I think it's the greatest novel ever written about the First World War. But obviously that is a minority taste, because I don't think anybody else thinks that, but I do.
Well, I think you're allowed to have that. If you've published it and you know it that intimately, and that's the reason you published it, it's great to have those reasons behind it, to make sure that people know this is a book that needs to be read. Because quite frequently, I think it's a bit like when I go to see films. If I see a film review, I almost always, if I go and see the film, I'm disappointed. And if I love a film, I can tell that the reviewers are going to have hated it. So, really, I think, that it's great that we're not all just following the herd and going, oh, well, that was the certain paper's, best-selling novel, everyone has to read it. Well, actually, there's so many wonderful books out there ripe for discovery, and so many authors who have been unfairly forgotten because they didn't have the publicity behind them, or the PR machine, or because, they weren't, the flavor of the month. And yet that doesn't mean that their writing isn't fantastic. So we've got I'm just going to tell people what's coming up next on the book club. So if you just 1 minute. So we've got tomorrow, Humphrey Hawksley is back in tomorrow, and he is interviewing Carol Walker, who is an award-winning BBC correspondent. She left war zone reporting to raise her young family and then became a political correspondent. From the BBC's Westminster hub, she reported real-life intrigue, backstabbing and conspiracies inside our government and parliament. She's now a presenter for Times Radio and has written a book called Lobby Life: Inside Westminster's Secret Society, which lifts the lid on the world of parliamentary lobbying and tells us what really happens behind the closed doors of power. That's going to be absolutely fascinating. And of course, as we know, Humphrey, with his own BBC experience, is going to know exactly how to ask those questions. Now, coming up next week, I am going to be interviewing a really great author. He's called Tobias Jones, Toby Jones, not to be confused with the actor Toby Jones. And his books are fascinating. They span from detective novels through to true crime, writing about true crime. So when I say that, he investigates real crimes. He lives in Italy, he's married to an Italian, and one of his books is called The Dark Heart of Italy, which has, I think, the most fantastic distinction of being hated by Berlusconi. I think for any author to get that accolade, that's absolutely wonderful. And his new book is called Ultras, and it's about the underworld of Italian football and Italian football violence. And I'm not a football fan at all, and I'm really intrigued by it. It's fascinating. He's also written life writing. He wrote a book called A Place of Refuge, about when he and his wife and young family lived and ran a kind of utopian society, as they hoped, for anybody who was needing refuge. So people coming out of prison, anybody who'd been struggling with mental health issues, they could move in and live and work on the land with them. Just an incredible book. This is when they were living in Somerset in England before they moved back to Italy. He's a great speaker and his books are really fantastic. And as I say, there's a whole gamut of different things that he writes about. It's fascinating. Then on the next Friday, the 11th of March, Humphrey will be back interviewing Simon Winchester, who is the author of The Professor and the Madman. Who's wrote? I can't believe I said that. It was who wrote. And of course, this is being recorded, so that's embarrassing. And then on the 17th of March, Humphrey is back again with Eric Brown, the author of Helix and Murder. And then I'm back with Melanie Hewitt on the 18th of March, who's written a new novel called Looking for the Durrells, about her obsession with the writer Gerald and Lawrence Durrell and their life in Corfu. So we've got a lot of really interesting things coming up. And who knows, maybe in the future, Persephone will be publishing some of these books that have been unfairly forgotten again. But for the moment, we're going to celebrate them for now. Now, Nicola, is there anything that you want to take Persephone to? Have you got any ideas about where the company is going to go, or are you happy with it at the moment?
Do you know, I'm happy with it, quite small.
Good. Small and perfect.
If we were bigger, because there are only 2 of us in the shop at any one time, and you know, I don't really want to expand. But we have, you know, when we send out our biannually, which is free and it's our main selling tool, we do send it out to 20,000 people. So that's quite good.
That is very good.
And
you can sign up for that, by the way. Anybody on the website, you can sign up to get the Persephone biannual magazine, essentially, isn't it? It's a lovely magazine. So we've got a comment here. I thought William an Englishman is wonderful. So it's not just you that thinks it's great. And another comment here, I use the info in these talks, I'm doing the Goldster talks, to look for good books, and it's great to have some recommendations. Thank you for saying that. I'm so glad you do, because we do like to make good recommendations. And what's so great is having this community of Goldster readers. And I know many of you are writers or aspiring writers yourselves as well. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming along. Nicola, it's been an absolute pleasure to see you in Zoom, and I do hope to see you in person again. At some point, I will make it back to Bath and into Persephone Books.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's been really lovely. And for anybody who wants to find out more about Persephone, I have put the website into the chat. And of course, you can also follow Persephone on social media and find out more. We've got one new message here saying, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming along. Enjoy the rest of your classes today. And I will look forward to seeing you next week. And Humphrey will look forward to seeing you tomorrow. If you are new to Goldster, if you've just tuned in for this, I'm sorry about my internet going crazy. I don't know why it kicked me out, but it doesn't normally happen. And do look on the Goldster Book Club website and just see everything else that's coming up, because there's some wonderful things and some great writers coming up. Thank you, everybody, for coming along. And I think that Stephanie is now going to put up a quick poll for you to answer. So Nicola and I will turn our videos off now. And we'll see you all soon. Nicola and Maria, wish we had more time. Thank you both. Well, Maria, come back tomorrow, please do. Bye.
Bye.